you feel my mind, or you feel my mind. We could build a dream, start up something new, and the world is on your shoulders, and you feel like falling over. Just let me in your head, so I can be there for you, there for you. The night is young, won't you sing for me? Won't you sing for me? Till we fall asleep.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to VC Masters on the Pod TV Network. I'm Nick Palavita. I will not be your host today, but I will introduce the host and also our special guest, because today we're going to be talking about a very important topic for all the financial advisors out there, of course, because you got that letter from New York that you better be looking at this, and also all the attorneys are listening to this. Very important. It's called cybersecurity. Because of the hacks and the hackers that are out there, everybody is under threat for losing their very important data, and of course, as the attorneys know, getting sued because you have data links. And so there's a warning put out by New York. There's warnings put out by the bar associations that you do need to get your cybersecurity in order. So with that, we're going to bring in the head of VC Masters, professor at Duke University, none other than our host and star of the show, Dr. Salman Azar. Dr. Azar, this is a very exciting topic for everybody because it affects everyone that's in business and all the people that are listening to the show. It's cybersecurity. When I was taking the bar classes, they just hit us up with their mandatory classes now in cybersecurity. But a lot of people go, okay, we know it's a problem now. What do we do? Lawyers are not trained in this area, I can tell you that. And financial advisors are sitting like, okay, it's a big problem because we handle a lot of data. A very important data, and unfortunately it can be lost. So it's going to be up to you and our special guest, and we're going to bring him in, who actually has a master's degree in cybersecurity. We're going to bring in Jason Lloyd. Jason, you're going to be carrying the show, we're going to put the weight of the problems of cybersecurity on your shoulders, because lawyers and financial advisors and business people don't want to deal with it. So I'm going to sit back and listen rather than talk.
Hello. Good morning, Jason. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Thank you. Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Well, I wanted to start by asking you, how does a day in your life look like?
That's a good question. Right now, we recently went to market with our product, Signum Insights. So we're currently in the marketing phase, trying to build brand awareness and help people realize what is the importance of the Signum Insights product is a risk assessment, and it's a SaaS product to help clients be able to get to what they need to do and what problems they need to address and prioritize how they're going to address it. So in my life right now, it's in my life right now, it's just trying to figure out how to get that news out to people and help them understand the need.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is definitely a great need. A month or so ago, Salesforce was hacked. And let's say if I'm Mark Benioff, what would you come tell me? How can you help me?
Sorry, I had a little bit of noise running through my computer. I was trying to trace it down. Could you repeat that?
Yes. So I was saying that Salesforce was hacked a month or two ago, and Mark Benioff, who's the CEO of Salesforce, if you get to meet him, what would you tell him? How can your insights help him?
That's a great question. I think the best way I can respond to that is probably with a little bit of a story to give you a little bit of context. I did a risk assessment for an ag tech business that was doing vertical farming, and they were growing wheat, grass to be able to feed the cattle to feed cattle. They would take vacuum seed up, move it into a tray, lay it out there, and it would go through these loops. And through these loops, it would go through different stations where it would be watered. It would have different light, and it would go through until at the end of 6-7 days, the grass is about 4 or 5 inches tall, and it would dump it out, and they would feed the cows. And because in China there was a lot of people that needed to find ways to be able to find food for their animals without a lot of space, to be able to save water, be able to save on space. This was something that was a special interest to them. So the FBI had gone to the CEO of this ag tech business and notified them that China was actively trying to steal their technology, figure out how to do it, replicate it, and build their business over there. And they advised the CEO to protect their assets, to protect their data, to take more steps to try to be secure. So when I went and did the risk assessment for them, the interesting thing is, as I'm sure is with Salesforce, I'm sure is with a lot of these companies, is this particular company had pretty decent cybersecurity hygiene. And by decent hygiene, I mean they had badge scan access to be able to come into the building. The first main floor was public access. Anybody could come in. But in order to get to the second floor where the employees were, where the data was, the information was, you had to have a separate scan access as well to be able to get up to it. And they kept the building on lockdown. So they had a lot of the good best practices. But what I found when I went and did the risk assessment is their lobby had manholes that were connected to the parking lot. So even though you had your building locked up and secured, somebody could come in on the weekend, drop down one of the manholes and pop up into the building and bypass the security. And it didn't stop there, but you also had a plant wall, because being in the ag tech business, they put a lot of weight into the presentation, make it look really good. They had this plant wall that was 2 stories high that was right next to the catwalk on the second floor access. And in order to keep that plant wall doing well, they had to water it, and they would have a scissor lift that they kept plugged in with the keys inside the scissor lift. And anyone that could come in could turn on the scissor lift, and it would take you right up to the second floor access. So as much as they had best practices as far as the badge scan access, having separate layers from the public areas, they were still very much breachable. And these types of breaches are not vulnerabilities that you're going to discover in a network scan. They're not the type of breaches that you're going to find by buying the most expensive software on the market and trying to implement it and finding out what's going on. And not necessarily all of your policies and procedures are going to catch it. They did have a policy for badge scan access, employee access, for public areas, for separated areas. But what's going to help people discover this is, and this I think is why it's important and mandatory, is cybersecurity has got to be very holistic. It does include your environment scanning. It does include a more holistic vulnerability assessment. And so if I were to go back to this breach, it would be looking at what do you not know? What things would have helped to be able to see into that? And as far as our product goes, what our product does is asks the questions about from 8 different points of view, from HR, from executive team, from your IT department, from your web developers, to all sorts of different areas to look and maybe see beyond just the policies and procedures, but how is this being implemented? Is this being followed through? And really trying to identify what gaps you have in your security.
Well, that's amazing. I would have never thought such low-tech things would make a difference, because when I'm thinking about cybersecurity, I'm actually thinking about hacking electronically as opposed to going through manholes. This is really fascinating that it's just physical security that's the issue here. And I don't know if a lot of cybersecurity companies worry about that. Do they?
I don't think so. Yes and no, because obviously there's physical security solutions. People are selling locks and cameras, and there are solutions, biometrics. But at the same time, I think most cybersecurity companies are focusing on a quick win. What can they do? For them, creating a software that just sits in there and scans the network and tells you what vulnerabilities sit on your computers, that's a very easy solution to sell to clients. That's a very easy thing to implement, where you don't have to be hands-on and looking at some of those things. But there are some of those soft solutions as well, but they tend to be more expensive. If you're going to do a full-scale vulnerability assessment, not just a vulnerability, what sits in your environment, but a risk assessment about your facilities, about your policies, Usually you're going to have to go to a consulting company, and it's going to be an engagement that's going to take several weeks. They're going to identify all of the stakeholders, and they're going to sit down with each of the stakeholders and pull them hours out of their time and asking all of these questions. That are going to go back and do their magic behind the scenes a couple weeks later and present you with a risk assessment that's going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, depending on your business and the size, the scope, the scale of the engagement. So there are some solutions like that, but I don't think it's the main focus or what typically people think of. They think of maybe some of those quicker, easier things to implement, or what a lot of cybersecurity companies are focusing on.
Definitely. You're very passionate about this. I was looking at your background. You've been doing this for a while. What got you interested in cybersecurity?
That's a great question. I kind of got my start in tech from an education point of view. I worked as a teacher and I taught math, I taught science, but the school was a little bit ahead of maybe some other schools, because they were trying to do distance education, remote learning, even before COVID, and they had a really great program, but they struggled trying to bring it out to all their audience. So with them, I was able to build this online distance learning program for them to help them get it out to everybody. But with that came challenges. How do they make sure that their classes are secured so that not everybody can jump in and start taking them? How do they protect that access? And how do they do it if a student drops enrollment so that they don't continue getting those classes? And even more importantly, how are they protecting the sensitive data that's collected from the student so that doesn't get out there all over the place? And so from there, I think it started to spin some wheels in my mind a little bit and open up some opportunities with cybersecurity. And I started studying a little bit more, go back to school, get my master's degree, and really engage. But something that's fascinated me is the opportunity in this field. As much as we talk about cybersecurity all the time, there was a survey in October 2022, the McKinsey survey, that estimates there's only 10% of market penetration from cybersecurity solutions to the people that need to implement it. There's a lot of opportunity. It's still relatively new, and a lot of work needs to be done. So when I look at what can I do to make a difference, or where can I go, to me, cybersecurity is a field that needs a lot of work. It needs a lot of I don't know, mining in a sense, to go in and start digging through and finding a way to provide these solutions to the people that need it most.
Definitely. So tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you, when you got interested in this and you worked on this distance learning project, what kind of challenges did you run into or give me an example of one of the things. Let's say if somebody drops out and they can continue learning, how did you stop that? Or if somebody, probably there was some testing, somebody hires a pro to take the test, and there are like people who make a business around just taking the tests. How did you prevent those kinds of challenges?
Yeah, authentication and good third-party providers. Sometimes just to get to market or just to get to launch, the company needed to find a solution that was going to work in the immediate run. I mean, you can host videos on YouTube, right? And you can post them up there. And going back several years, there's all sorts of streaming platforms that were available. But then again, how do you find which ones are going to provide you with the needs that you have? So it's a good question. I think first there needs to be scoping and sequencing done to sit down with the business owners and identify what those needs are. Because if there are 15 different streaming options to choose from, how do you know which streaming option, which third-party provider is going to be the best provider that's going to work for your use case? In the case of the school, they needed to be able to provide that sort of privacy or security that people weren't going to be able to continue watching the classes once they dropped out. So we had to find a streaming provider that was going to give us the ability to authenticate who their users were. We had to look at the authentication methods and make sure that those were rigorous enough for what we needed it to be. And then also that we're going to protect the data and look at how they're doing it. So sometimes a lot of companies in trying to get started look for a cheap solution, a quick solution, easy solution. but maybe they miss some of the due diligence that needs to be done. We look at what's happening in the world of ransomware. And this really started escalating around 2014. It's kind of a fascinating story. It's really it's our own government that kind of caused us a little bit of problems when it comes to ransomware, because the NSA had developed some tools that would allow them access to any Windows computer in the world. And rather than reveal that there was a vulnerability and give Microsoft the opportunity to patch it, this was their key, the golden key that give them access to anywhere that they needed for their spy program, for intelligence. This was their secret until it wasn't, right? Until somebody somebody gets this access, they post it on the dark web, and it becomes global information. And now any computer can be compromised. And now all of a sudden ransomware starts to spin up and it starts to take its toll. Ransomware is holding companies accountable for taking a shortcut. If they're not being protective, and it's not just ransomware, but hackers and a lot of these people, they try to present themselves as a legitimate business organization, and they're looking at it almost as if they're the good guys. They're doing you a favor for having found these problems or having found this deal. And they're providing you with education or an opportunity to try to secure your business or try to secure your stuff for a price. And they're trying to get you to pay that price. And that price is a lot higher than the price that would have been paid if oftentimes a company would have taken a little bit of extra time to do the due diligence at the beginning to patch those leaks or to find out what would keep those people from coming in. But what we've seen that's kind of fascinating is as ransomware started to escalate and take off, and businesses had to be paying more and more of these prices, initially, a lot of the targets were high value targets. You look at banks, JP Morgan and ESPN, CNN did an interesting article with CNN a few years ago where they interviewed them, and they looked at their cybersecurity spending. They're spending $600 million a year. They had more engineers than Google trying to secure their assets. And so the spend of some of these companies to protect their data from attackers, from ransomware, from bad actors, if we look at the entire marketplace like a fruit tree, what's been happening is these more ideal targets like your JP Morgan, your banks, have been moving their apples, their fruits further up the tree and trying to protect those from being hacked. They spend a lot of money, they hire a lot of resources, they do what they can to try to protect that data. But the rest of the world, the other 90% of the market that cybersecurity solutions hasn't been able to penetrate yet, I feel like they all know they need to do something, but they're not exactly sure where to start or what to do, and they haven't moved their fruit up the tree, and so they're very quickly becoming the new target that bad actors are looking for, because you can target one JP Morgan bank and spend a lot of time researching and trying to find a chink in the armor, or you can blast out thousands of emails to other companies that have just as sensitive data. When you're talking about collecting social security numbers or financial information, you're talking about collecting HIPAA information, all sorts of sensitive information is being collected, not just by large organizations that have had a target on their back for a long time, but all sorts of organizations have this kind of information. And as all of these high value targets have been moving their apples up the tree, attackers have been shifting their aim to try to focus more on these small ones that even a lot of times may not even realize they're being breached.
Definitely. In fact, I received a ransomware request for a small business, actually a nonprofit business that teaches school kids chess in schools. And they said, your database has been hacked, and et cetera, and you spend, give us $5,000 so that we can kind of like fix it and all that. To your point, I mean, they are pretending to be good guys. And it turned out to be somebody in Oregon who didn't even hack our database, was just like asking for ransom. We had to spend about $1,000 to make sure that, everything is in order and there was like no breach. And we went through all the logs and this and that. And in the end, it turned out to be just a spoof. So do you see that also coming through often, that we're
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what is the, that seems like a pretty profitable business for people, right? They don't even do anything and they just send these emails just like marketing campaigns.
Extremely. Just within the last month, I saw one, and it wasn't ransomware, but it's very similar to what you're describing. Is a company that was purporting to be a law firm that was protecting property rights, and they sent a menacing letter to a small business saying that here you were using an image that you don't have rights to use, and because you've been using this image, this artist, our client that we're representing is seeking damages. So you're going to have to pay, one, for the damages that you've caused in however many thousand euros, and two, you're going to have to pay us to be able to license the image that you're going to continue to use. And it'll be a 1-year license, and the next year you're going to have to renew that and pay it. And it becomes extortion is what it is. And the funny thing is, the company was asking the people that were putting the law firm that was putting the menacing letter together was asking the small business to provide proof that they had the license to the image that they were using. And they even had the link to the website. It looked very, very official, very proper. And technically they're not doing anything wrong, but they didn't provide any proof on their end that they even had the ability to receive money, that they could give the small company a license to be able to use the product, right? More, it's a fear tactic. You have until this day to be able to figure it out. If you don't, we're going to take you to court. We're going to sue you in all of these different courts. And the small business, and in this case, they were protected because they were very careful with their history. They had the license for every single image that they had downloaded. They didn't do anything wrong. There was nothing that they were going to lose in court. There was no risk for them. But for the other company, they can send out 1 million of those letters, and some of these people are not going to fall for it. Some of them have the protection, and some of these people, they know they've been up to shady things, or maybe they've been, copying images off the internet, and they're worried, like, did I miss something? Let's just pay it to make it go away. And it's extortion. It's almost like what you see in the physical world when you have gangs coming around and extorting local businesses. Pay me $500 a week for protection money to make sure that you're not getting robbed, or make sure this isn't going to happen. But it's transferring into a digital world. But a lot of these thugs, where actual businesses that are registered, that are acting as if they're acting in good faith, it's kind of fascinating to see.
Yeah. So what's really strange about this is a law firm doing that, and that's what really gets my goat, is that they know the law better. So isn't this like illegal for the law firm to do this extortion?
I'm sure it is, but who's going to hold them accountable, right? That's the question. If they send that out to thousands of people, and some people are just going to look at it and ignore it. Some people are going to look at it and say, okay, here's my proof. And some people are going to panic and pay the money, but who's going to take the time to go after the company and hold them accountable for what they're doing?
Yeah. That makes sense. Let's come to physical security. You give the example of manholes and being able to physically break into it, and that reminds me of that Mission Impossible scene where Tom Cruise kind of goes through the ceiling and the HVAC units and so on and so forth. How else are people able to break into physically break into secure systems, and what can be done to prevent that?
That's a great question. There's all sorts of different ways it can be done. And something just came to my mind thinking about it is, if you even have somebody that's working on a computer next to a window, they want to have a good view or whatever. And even if you have your screen open and it's got sensitive information, somebody's just going to go through, they can peek through or pull some of that information off there. What do you have that's visible to the outside world? What do you have that's visible even inadvertently? That's a physical thing that can be a problem. And sometimes something as simple as tinting the windows, or planting bushes or shrubs to be able to create a distance between the window and the outside, so people aren't able to go in and get that information. That's something that can happen. You also see it all the time when you have a secure facility and you have third-party contractors that need to come work at the facility. and trying to make sure that they have a key access, and you don't want them getting locked out of the building, or they show up and they start working on it and they'll put rocks in the doors to wedge them open or to hold them open. And now you've got a door. It's not even Mission Impossible going through a manhole, but just walking through a door in and out that's been propped open because you have third-party people that maybe don't have the access or haven't been trained. And the other one that this is kind of interesting is you'd be surprised, and maybe you wouldn't, but sometimes the easiest approach is just to walk in and pretend like you know what you're doing. You're where you're supposed to be, and people don't ask questions because they're maybe timid or shy, or they don't want to interrupt you, or embarrassed to ask. So sometimes just walking through with confidence, just saying you're supposed to be there, you know what you're doing, and just going through and getting the information, and people don't ask questions or don't stop them, or sometimes even you have internationals that come through and just pretend like they're ignorant. They're just taking photos and they don't speak the language or they don't understand, but really they know exactly what they're doing, and they're trying to get as much information as they can to be able to replicate that overseas.
Yeah, that reminds me of Frank Abagnale, I believe was the name. It was played by Leonardo DiCaprio in a movie, Catch Me If You Can, that he had like lots of things that there was like, he was an imposter basically who was an extremely bright guy that did a lot of different things and just got by just walking in with confidence. And I think there was another TV show that was back in the 20th century. I'm dating myself now, called Pretender, where basically this guy is that's what he does for a living, is that he pretends to be what he is not. I often think about janitors and cleaning staff. They have usually access to a lot of places. How are they monitored? Because if I'm working in a highly secure facility, somebody has to clean things. I'm not going to do that. Isn't that a big vulnerability? How do you get around? How do you prevent that?
Absolutely. It's a great question. And it's got to come down to vending, right? You're vetting your vendors, finding out, who are you hiring? What are their hiring practices? And it might cost a little bit more money to find janitors that are doing background checks on their employees. It would be worth asking the question, what are your policies and procedures? What things are you going to do to protect our information when we're doing it? And what kind of access are you providing them? What kind of keys do you give them? Do you just have them cleaning the public spaces? It all comes down to scoping and scoping the engagement, looking at how much access you're going to be providing them. What does that give them access to? And then also, what are they doing to assure me? What assurances are in place? What practices do they have? What are their policies? So even in a janitor company, there's ways that cybersecurity becomes important for hiring practices, for their policies, for how they can provide assurances for the companies that they'll be working at.
So, regardless of how much background check you do, there is like the story about Abe Lincoln, who's also known as Honest Abe, that somebody offered him a bribe, something like $2,000, which is a lot of money. And he threw that person out of his office, and his secretary asked him, why did you do that? And he said, well, he came too near my price. I was tempted. So even somebody who is like known for his honesty can be tempted for the right amount of money. So especially if you're a janitor. Again, I'll actually give you an interesting example. Duke has this free tuition program that if you have 5 years of service at Duke as a staff member or faculty member, your kids go to Duke for free. So it makes, and this is not fraud or breach or anything like that. So it makes sense for you to take like a janitor or a low-level staff job in order to get free tuition for your kids. And to prevent that, Duke has this 5-year waiting period. But I'm just thinking about like, otherwise, if a janitor who's getting paid like $50,000 a year or whatever they get paid, all of a sudden gets a bribe for $1 million to get access to something. It's very tempting.
It's very tempting. It's a great point. So you mentioned chess a little bit earlier. You're a fan of the game, right? You probably know a lot about it. If you're hanging out with Nicholas,
Yes, I am.
You know your way around the board. Hanging pieces, right? You try to avoid having hanging pieces that can be captured and you can't do anything about it, right? Mm-hmm. And in cybersecurity, that's defense in depth. And what we do is try to figure out, how do we protect on different layers? It's not just having one piece that's protecting it, but a second or third. So if I move a piece out in the middle of the board and there's nothing to protect it and it gets captured, that's the end. I lose that piece I've lost, and now I'm at a disadvantage, right? And cybersecurity. So, and the example that you bring with janitors is a really good point. So if I say, what are the policies that they have with hiring, and even if they hire the best employees, that's almost like putting a piece out there. But if I'm relying just on that, it's almost becoming a hanging piece or a liability, and that if that gets breached, I'm in trouble. So what else can I do as a company to protect that piece that I've moved into play? And so then now, if I have security cameras that are in the areas that are secure, and I'm monitoring those, that's another piece that's going to be putting that to protect it. So now I've done my due diligence with the third party. I've asked them questions. I've looked at how their hiring practices are. I've looked at their protection, the insurance, or what they're doing. It's a legitimate company. They're doing the best they can. But like you say with Honest Abe, what happens if somebody's offering them $50,000 to breach, and here's an opportunity to really pad their pockets? The best practices aren't going to stop it. But now I have deterrence in that I've got videos, cameras that are watching these different locations, that they always have to work in pairs. So it's not as tempting that one person's going to be alone in a situation where they're going to be it's going to be easier for them to be compromising the data that I have. And then I can take it a step further, because just the fact that you have cameras as a deterrence only goes so far. Is the camera going to be in a low lit area where you can't see their face? Is it going to be pointed in the right directions? Is it going to work with night vision? And even if it's capturing it, is anybody even reviewing the footage? How often are the logs being reviewed? So you've got layers of your
Definitely.
Contracts that you're looking at. An executive layer with
definitely.
policies.
And with that, I think Nick wants to capture us because we are running out of time.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're running out of time. It's like playing chess with the clock. The clock is running down. But the thing is, it's not necessarily unimportant. This is a very important issue for anybody in the financial and legal services that deal with data. There's a physical and a computer aspects to data hacking. And we'll see you next time on VC Masters with Dr. Salman Azar. But in the meantime, keep your assets safe. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
I go anywhere with you, 'cause you fill my mind, or you fill my mind. We could build a dream, start up something new, and the world is on your shoulders, and you feel